Hi everybody, welcome to Just Off the Highway. I'm Al Progers. Do you ever go to a tourist attraction and think about all the people who've been there before you? Or you experience a beautiful view of picturesque scenery and you wonder whether it's always been this peaceful? I have two stories that might change your idea of a day at the beach. But first, I want to thank the members of this channel who do go to buymeacoffee.com/lprogers and leave me a personal note and a tip. Without your generosity and your commitment, I would have had to close down this journey a long time ago. In return, members get regular exclusive bonus episodes like this one that I'm sharing with everybody now. I'm hoping that a taste of this extra content will persuade you to show your support with the price of just 1 cup of coffee to help keep our wheels turning. Right, let's go to the KwaZulu-Natal South Coast. This is Silver Beach in Port Edward on the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal. On any holiday, especially when it gets cold in the interior of South Africa, thousands of tourists roll down the escarpment like an avalanche to spend a holiday on this coast. Please excuse the lighting changes and wind noise. I had to come back at various times of the day when this place isn't completely full of beachgoers. The giant sand dune behind me dominates and overlooks the beach, and in the afternoon it gives lots of shade to the swimmers and beachgoers. But very few of them realize that it has a dark history of suffering and death. Its name is Tragedy Hill. In the 1820s, Port Natal, later called Durban and then renamed eThekwini, was the base of a small ragtag bunch of white ivory traders, hanging on there by the goodwill of the Zulu Emperor Shaka. But then Shaka was assassinated and succeeded by Dingaan, who didn't appreciate the way competing traders jostled unscrupulously for business. Their rivalry was causing tensions in his realm. And they went too far when they spread the false rumor that British forces were about to invade Zululand. Their backstabbing made Dingaan feel insecure. And so he decided to do a little backstabbing of his own. Soon, the white settlers and traders found out that Zulu regiments were on their way to kill them all, and so they fled. Some managed to escape on a ship that happened to be anchored in the bay. Others hid in the bush. And one family group, under the leadership of Henry Finn, drove their herds of cattle south, down the coast, heading for the sanctuary of a mission station beyond Zulu territory. The Zulus thought that Finn and his group were stealing Dingaan's cattle, and they attacked. The final showdown happened up there on that dune. Henry Finn escaped into the sea. He clung to the rocks, but all the others were massacred. It was all a misunderstanding brought out by what we would today call fake news, a tragedy. And so the dune became widely known as Tragedy Hill. But we have to go back even further in time to the 16th century to discover another horrific tragedy that unfolded on the beach, in the shadow of that dune. The wreck of the Sao Joao. In her day, the Sao Joao was the largest ship that sailed the route between India and Europe. She was loaded to the gunwales with treasure, spices like pepper, Ming Dynasty porcelain, fabulous tapestries. There's no real record of what else she carried, but it was said that she was worth $1 million in gold, and that's in 1552. You're welcome to adjust for inflation. She was precious and sparkly as a butterfly, and just as fragile. Sailing with her was another ship, the Saint Jerome. The Sao Joao set off heading for Europe with the Saint Jerome from India, and they almost made it to the Cape of Good Hope. Almost. A massive storm came up and drove them all the way north up the east coast of Africa. The Saint Jerome sank with no survivors somewhere near today Richards Bay. And when the wind changed direction and pushed the Sao Joao all the way back here, the ship was wrecked on these rocks. About 110 people died. But the Sao Joao was heavily overcrowded as well as overloaded. Over 500 passengers and crew, including 320 slaves, washed up on this beach. The survivors camped somewhere around this actual spot while they tried to figure out what to do. Now, since the wreck was discovered in the 1980s, experts have been searching for a single definitive campsite. That giant dune is one possibility, and there's evidence that they did spend time there and at another spot just down the river. But there were 500 of them, so I have no difficulty believing that the camps spread out as humans do when shelter and resources are scarce. And then they chose to walk up the coast to known Portuguese settlements in Mozambique. They walked, and they died as they walked. After slogging over 700 kilometers, around 200 survivors had made it as far as Lorenzo Marques Bay, that's present-day Maputo. But their suffering wasn't nearly over. The nearest permanent settlement at that time was 500 kilometers further north at Inhambane. And eventually they arrived, all who were still alive. There were only 22. So there we have 500 years of dreary goings-on around that dune. I paused for a while at a very informative monument to commemorate the wreck of the Sao Joao. And the story is represented on the monument. But there's one more grisly detail that I read about. Some locals claim that the slopes of Tragedy Hill are still littered with bones. And I don't mean bits of old takeaway meals that litter any beach. Real human bones. Myth? Legend? Superstition? I was pressed for time, so I wasn't able to walk up and look for myself. Maybe next time you visit Port Edward, you could visit the dune and see for yourself. Once again, huge thanks to all members and supporters. If you enjoy this content, please pop onto buymeacoffee.com/lprodgers. Then you'll get more of it, and at the same time, you'll help keep South African stories alive. I'm looking forward to seeing you all further on up the road. Bye.